Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome to the showdown between the Beastmen led by Morker the Shadowgave and the Greenskins, who are going to be led by Doctor Doom and Darkness, who, and for any of you guys that don't know the reference, it's basically just kind of a reference to Doctor Doom, because I feel like he kind of looks like Doctor Doom a little bit with his mask. Well, not really, but I don't know. It's a very obscure reference, but regardless, it's going to be Azag the Slaughterer here with the Spirit Leech and the Soul Blade, so definitely some good stuff. So as far as my army goes, we're going to be going a little bit Beastman-ek today, or Morker-ek, or I don't even Morg-ek, Surtha Morger, I don't know. My brain's not working very well today, but regardless, we're going to be using a couple Razorgore Chariots, hopefully getting pretty good value against like Black Orcs and, even against Biggins if you stay mobile and you don't sit and sustain combat. I feel like the Chariots can be very punishing, but the Razorgore Chariots definitely hit very hard. They have 48 weapon strength with a bonus for his infantry, very, very good armor piercing, and man, that is a huge bonus for his infantry. And on top of that, they have a charge bonus of 80. So these guys are ready to party, and they're going to be riding dirty with the Shadowcaster. So we do have a Brave Shaman with the Lore of Shadows. So whenever I'm preparing for a charge, I can use Enfeebling Foe or a Melkoth to kind of slow my targets and then get a really nice charge in. His chariot is also quite powerful. On top of that, to be escorting the chariots and just making sure they don't get caught by Biggins or Spider Riders, we have a couple groups of Centaurs. So one group here and one on the far side, each of which, or actually he's already rotating over, but each of which is going to be teamed up with a group of Poison Warhounds. So it should be pretty good. I mean, Centaurs do very well against Biggins. I think their combat stats are pretty similar. So it's usually a pretty atrocious trade, but I think that the Biggins are faster and more mobile, so you can usually get a pretty good advantage there. For my main army, it's going to be a couple groups of Bestigors. We have 3 Bestigor herds in totals. Typically, from my experience, whenever I play Greenskins against the Beastmen, I like to bring Black Orcs, so I'm kind of just thinking, what would I bring? So in that case, I would probably want to bring Bestigors to put up a pretty good fight, and at least they do have armor piercing, so we have 3 Bestigors here, and we have a Giant. So I figured that with, the amount of chariots I have and the amount of hounds and centaurs and things like that, that I can get away with bringing a Giant simply because there's going to be so much pressure on my opponent's back line. So that's kind of what I was thinking there. Hopefully it works out. So we do have a Giant, we got Morker, and that is pretty much it. So Morker, he's got his Pimp Claw. He's ready to go. So yeah, that's it for my army. For my opponent, Black Orcs in the front line. In the secondary line, I think he does have a couple groups of Orc Biggins. He does have the Regiment of Renowned Goblins, I think, somewhere lurking. Yeah, looks like he does. And these ones, I think, are they the AP Cloonies? I can't remember because these ones for some reason don't have their name in their tooltip, which I know somebody explained that to me once why that was. But anyways, Goblin Big Boss, he's got Azag or Dr. Doom and Darkness, Spirit Leech, Soul Blight, Nasty Skulkers here, Goblin Archers in the back line with the Rusty Arrows back here. So he does have a pretty substantial little firing squad. In the flanks, he does have Goblin Wolf Riders teamed up, or not Goblin Wolf Riders, or Forest Goblin Spider Riders who are going to be teamed up with Orc Boy Biggins. So definitely a solid build for my opponent. I honestly really like it. I think it's safe, it's well-rounded, and it has answers to most threats. So a lot of this game is really going to come down to how efficiently my opponent's missiles can take out the Giant, because if the Giant can sit, it can win the frontline engagement, especially with Morker and his Chaos Bond. And again, the Chariots also need to be quite effective. So if the Chariots get mucked up by Goblin Wolf Riders or Spider Riders, it's going to be a little bit tough for me to potentially take this game. So immediately, my opponent did have some tricky business over here. So we had the Boars, and you can see the Boars are trying to scurry away right now. I think he saw that I did have a pretty aggressive force coming this way, and I haven't discovered them yet. So right now I just saw the Spider Riders, and then all of a sudden I discovered these Biggins trying to flee. So he was probably going to try and pincer me, but thankfully the Beastmen are pretty mobile. So he's going to countercharge me, realizing that he's not going to get away. So very good stuff for my opponent here, but my Centaurs are also going to charge in and take out a few of those pigs on the charge. You can see, I think a couple of them have fallen. You can see the Biggins definitely not happy, so I do use Enfeebling Foe, but my Hounds are also taking a punishment, and his Forest Goblin Spider Riders come in as well. But of course, Beastmen Cav are faster, so I'm going to be sweeping around with my Warhounds, trying to catch these guys, keep them from retreating, and hopefully be able to pin down these filthy pigs. We do have the Enfeebling Foe. So their melee defense and melee attack is literally 0 right now on both fronts, so hopefully we'll be in pretty good shape there. His Biggins and the rest of his troops are kind of forming ranks. My army is advancing somewhat slowly. I don't know why they seem so slow today, but the Giant, 36 speed on that guy. But basically, I'm just going to be kind of, pulling the Chariots in the front, trying to get some decent value, while my battle over here is occupying most of his cav. So these Biggins are pretty much done for. I do have my Centaurs here who are kind of pinning them, the second group, but he actually did okay damage, considering he got caught in a pretty heavy ambush. And yeah, you can see those guys did great. My Centaurs are actually wavering and pretty beat up, and he's going to lose these guys, but they still did pretty good for themselves. I was able to also get rid of those Forest Goblin Spider Riders. So the Chariots are going to be sweeping into the front line. He does have Nasty Skulkers in the secondary, so I have to be a little bit careful, but some of those guys are going to be sent flying. The Bacon just relentless into those Black Orcs. So far, the fact that we've been able to distract his Cav force has been really, really good for us. So we're going to be falling back. The Skulkers, of course, running up to get their smoke bombs, and the Goblin Big Bosses are also very, very good against Chariots. So I don't want any of that. So I'm going to be falling back, pulling behind my army, and yeah, you can see at this point some of the Bestigors are going to be engaging. A little bit of an uphill charge. He gets the downhill charge here, but Bestigors already have such a huge advantage against the Biggins, simply because Biggins have very poor armor piercing, so it's going to be a little bit tough for the Biggins to hold against these beast infantry. The Giants also going to be moving in as well behind the Bestigor, so the Night Goblins take the brunt of it. The Chariots just kind of roaming with my Shadowcaster. Over here, we're basically just in a war of attrition. So at this point, you can see the Centaurs here. There's two groups fighting, the Poison Hounds. The Forest Goblin Spider Riders are broken, but it's still going to take me... Are they broken? Or are they... No, they're actually wavering, so they're still fighting, but it's going to take some time to get rid of those Orc Boy Biggins, for sure. In the mainline fight, the Giant is underway. My opponent's getting some pretty good firepower here, so the Giant's going to start taking some work. The Chariots do get caught with the Smoke Bomb here, so I was a little bit stressed out. I was like, oh no, I've been caught. The Biggins are going to get here. The Goblin Big Bosses, but I think it only caught like one of my groups. The Shadowcaster and the other one are able to get away, and really I'm not taking too much damage. I might actually lose one of the Razor Gores here, but at this point, I'm like, okay, I'm going to lose this battle if I don't shut down those archers. They have a Soul Blight here. They're starting to do a ton of damage to my Giant. And I think, what is his base armor, like 15 or 20? But yeah, look at this. Even just a couple seconds of those Goblins focusing is going to be able to melt down my Giant. So good stuff for my opponent. You can see I do summon some Chaos Spawn in the back. So the Chaos Spawn are just going to be bro-charging these Goblins. And on that same note, the Chariots are coming in. You can see they're just going to be sweeping in, just shouting and roaring as they come into these archers. Just brutality. The Goblins flying into the camera. That is some awesome stuff right there. My opponent does pop the wall, a little bit delayed, but I think he figures now that he's actually in true combat. Like, I'm engaged, I'm committed. A pretty patient wall for my opponent, so I definitely think that was some good stuff. But in the back, the surprise Chaos Spawn Blitzkrieg here. He probably should have left some nasty Skulkers back here to protect these guys, because now they're just getting mowed on. The Chariots are just running amok, but he probably didn't have the Smoke Bombs on cooldown anyway, so I think my Chariots are in pretty good shape. Our line fighting's pretty even. The Chaos Spawn and the Giant are just kind of stomping the yard. You can see some of the Beastmen flying, and Azag is pretty strong. He could probably beat up Morker with some good Spirit Leech play. Now the Chariots are just going to be running amok, just kind of riding through the infantry. Some nasty Skulkers coming back. Probably going to lose this Chariot right here. We'll see if it escapes. Come on, push through. Go, Bacon, go. So the Bacon's going to be pulling back. A couple of them are going to be slamming into the mainline fight, which is going to be brutal for these Black Orcs. They're already in a very tough fight versus a Giant Chaos Spawn, which doesn't be poison. Because, like you guys said, or not said, but like you guys know, the Regiment, not Regiment. My brain is just so out of it. The Chaos Spawn for the Beastmen does imbue poison. That's going to be really, really good for us. We're going to get poison on some of these guys. You can see the Giant, he was able to stabilize. He took a ton of damage from those archers, but the fact that we were able to just so heavily compromise that back line was just game-breaking for this match. The Summon Chaos Spawn are now fighting some of these Biggins here, which is going to be a bad engagement for them, but regardless, it's keeping the Biggins busy. They're not going to really, do much elsewhere. They're about to degenerate anyways, and the Chariots are just running back and forth and just doing massive damage against these Orcs. And the Giant is also being supported as well, so we should be able to crack these Black Orcs right now. They're shaken. The Goblin Big Bosses are starting to buckle. Azag is taking massive damage from this Giant. And the fight over here was pretty atrocious, but ultimately I ended up winning. The Centaurs and the Poison Hounds were able to take those guys out, so man, it was a cool game. It was relatively fast, but it was very intense, and there was a couple determining points. Number one, the Chariots being able to get in there. Our mobility with our Centaurs and Poison Hounds being able to catch those Orc Biggins was really, really important. We caught those guys out in the forest. Had those Biggins been entrenched in the main army, like what I probably would have done if my opponent is just knowing the Beastmen are a little bit more mobile, I would have kept the Orc Boy Biggins as well as the Poison Riders like in the back. Like had he been able to just protect those archers, for example, like if my Chariots tried to get in there and his Orc Boy Biggins were able to just countercharge my Chariots, I would have just been GG for the Chariots. They wouldn't have been able to do much. They're slower. Granted, I could have baited him into conflict and protected my Chariots with the Centaurs. It would have been a much tougher game for me. I had relative freedom considering his cav and his mobile forces were committed so early to fighting my Centaurs, which I feel is an engagement that does favor me. So yeah, I think that was a big factor there. Maybe just keeping a couple of these guys to defend his archers, because honestly, his build was solid. You guys saw how fast that Giant was going down. I really like Dr. Doom and Darkness with his Spirit Leech, kind of melting my Giant, and then also the Soul Blight was very good in the front line. But really, the Chariots being able to get into the archer line in the back, which is devastating. That was really rough. And you guys saw the bounce power was like dead even until that happened. And at that point when that happened, like the Giant was able to just tear out the Greenskin infantry, well, not the Black Orcs, but the other ones, and was able to do massive armor piercing damage against the Black Orcs. So that was a big turning point in my opinion. I just think ultimately just playing a little bit more defensively with his Forest Goblin Spider Riders and the Biggins, and he certainly could have had a really good chance of taking that game. So anyways, very well played to my opponent. The Goblin Grenade, very solid reference to Magic the Gathering. It's a pretty cool card. Goblin Grenade is a magic card that, for any of you guys that don't know, it basically allows you to like sacrifice your goblins to just blow. Like they literally strap grenades to their backs, and in the original art, it's pretty funny. But yeah, very well played to my opponent. Look forward to running into again on ladder, and hopefully you guys enjoyed seeing more current action. And also, while I'm here, if there's any factions you guys want to see played that you feel are underrepresented here on the channel, please let me know, and I'll try my best to get more replays of those. Thanks again, guys. Have an excellent night, and take care.